I was 3 days deep into the trail when the crushing weight of solitude finally pressed down on me. It hadn't felt that way at first. No, not at all. The path had been alive with activity. Hikers weaving through the trees, their boots crunching the dirt in rhythm with mine. We'd traded nods, swapped a few words about the weather, or the climb ahead. Some stopped to ask where I was going, and I'd answered with quiet pride. The whole trail, start to finish. Their faces flickered with reactions. Admiration from some, doubt from others. A few even offering faint smiles, tinged with concern. I got it. A woman hiking alone, a first-timer no less, venturing into the wild expanse. It wasn't the kind of thing you'd call a safe bet. But I wasn't reckless. No, I'd spent months preparing for this. My pack? A fortress of essentials. A lightweight tent, a water filter, a stove, a first aid kit, a satellite beacon I'd tested, twice. I'd pored over topographic maps until the lines blurred in my sleep, memorized every creek and ridge, plotted every campsite near water and high traffic zones. Safety wasn't just a hope, it was a plan. I'd calculated the risks, weighed them against the thrill, and decided I could handle it. The wilderness wasn't a stranger to me anymore. It was a puzzle I'd solved on paper. That confidence held firm. Until yesterday. Around noon, the trail emptied out. No more footsteps echoing ahead, no distant chatter filtering through the pines. Just me, the wind, and the endless stretch of earth. At first, I welcomed it. The silence. Oh, it was a gift after days of small talk. The landscape unfurled like a secret kept from the world, untouched, almost holy. Towering pines clawed at the sky, their branches interlocking to form a cathedral of green, sunlight spilling through in fractured beams. Pools of water glittered along the gorge, some no bigger than puddles, others vast enough to swallow the horizon, their surfaces trembling with reflections of clouds. A creek traced a silver thread through the valley, its soft gurgle the only voice in the stillness. The air smelled of resin and damp moss, sharp, alive, pulling me into a place that felt older than time itself. By late afternoon, I reached my chosen campsite. A narrow clearing carved between slabs of granite, half hidden from the trail by a curtain of trees. It was perfect. Close to the creek, sheltered from the wind. A spot I'd marked weeks ago on my map. I dropped my pack, stretched my aching shoulders, and set to work. The tent went up quickly, stakes driven deep into the soil. I boiled water on my stove, mixed it into a pouch of dehydrated chili, and ate slowly, savoring the warmth as the sun dipped below the ridge. The day's fatigue melted away, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. I'd made it this far. I was doing this. Then, I saw him. He was maybe 50 yards off, a shadow slipping through the trees. His pace was slow, deliberate, head tilted slightly downward, as if lost in thought. My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. No instant panic, just a flicker of unease, a ripple across the calm I'd built. Another hiker, I told myself. Nothing more. The trail wasn't mine alone, after all. But something about him gnawed at me. Maybe it was the way he moved. Too steady. Too quiet. Or the fact that I hadn't seen anyone in over a day. I set my meal down, eyes tracking him as he drew closer. He looked up, caught sight of me, and raised a hand in a lazy wave. I hesitated, then mirrored it, my fingers stiff. That should have been it, a fleeting exchange, a silent agreement to coexist in this vast nowhere. He'd pass by, find his own spot, and we'd both carry on. He didn't pass! Instead, he turned, his trajectory bending straight toward me. My stomach tightened. I scanned my gear, pack half open, stove still hissing faintly, knife tucked in a side pocket. It was a utility blade, meant for slicing cord or peeling bark, not fighting off a threat. I could grab it if I needed to. I could run if it came to that. My mind raced through escape routes, the creek to my left, the dense thicket to my right, the trail snaking back the way I'd come. I wasn't trapped. Not yet. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see him clearly now. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Dark hair hung shaggy over his forehead, a few days' stubble shadowing his jaw. His clothes were faded, jacket patched at the elbows, pants scuffed at the knees, but not dirty, just worn from use. His pack was heavy, straps taut, gear clinking faintly as he shifted his stance. "Didn't expect to see anyone out here," he said, his voice warm, almost too warm. "Thought I'd claimed this stretch for myself." I forced a smile, keeping it small. "Yeah, same here." He tilted his head, eyes drifting past me to my tent. "Mind if I set up near you? Just for the night. Safety in numbers, right?" The words sounded reasonable, but every nerve in my body rebelled. "No!" I wanted to scream, "Keep moving, find your own spot." But he was already sliding his pack off, letting it thud to the ground like my answer was irrelevant. My throat tightened. Maybe I was overthinking it. People shared campsites all the time. It was a courtesy, a practicality in the wild. I'd read about it in forums, seen it in videos. Normal. "Yeah, I guess so," I said, the words dragging out of me. "Just for the night." He grinned, a flash of teeth that didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Owen!" I nodded, not offering mine. He didn't ask. Instead, he turned to his pack, pulling out a tent and hammering stakes into the dirt with practiced ease. He talked as he worked, his voice filling the clearing like a radio left on. 5 days on the trail, he said, starting from the southern end. He'd seen a fox steal his breakfast once, camped through a thunderstorm that nearly washed him out. His stories were vivid, almost rehearsed, and he tossed them at me like we'd known each other for years. I kept my responses short, mm-hms and vague nods, revealing nothing. No mention of my solo status. No hint that no one knew exactly where I was. The sun sank, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Owen gathered firewood, piling it high between our tents. I hadn't planned on a fire, too bright, too loud in the dark, but he didn't ask. He struck a match, and soon flames licked the air, snapping and popping as they devoured the dry branches. "No point in freezing out here," he said, settling on a rock with a satisfied grunt. I didn't reply, just watched the firelight dance across his face. He looked relaxed, almost boyish. But there was something in his eyes, a glint I couldn't read. Then he dug into his pack, again, pulling out food. Not the lightweight packets I'd been rationing, but real food. Instant rice, a can of beans, and a surreal touch. A vacuum-sealed steak, the kind you'd see in a grocery store, not a forest. He skewered it on a stick, held it over the flames, and the smell hit me like a punch. Rich, savory, primal. My stomach growled, loud enough to betray me. "You eaten yet?" he asked, glancing over. "Yeah," I lied, my mouth watering. He laughed, a low rumble. "Come on, I can hear that from here." I hesitated, pride warring with hunger. But when he tore off a piece of the steak and held it out, still sizzling, I caved. It was the best thing I'd tasted in days. Juicy, warm, a fleeting comfort. We ate in the glow of the fire, and he kept talking. More stories, more charm. He spoke of a night he'd heard wolves howling too close to his tent, a time he'd stumbled on an abandoned cabin miles off any trail. I laughed once, then twice, the sound surprising me. For a moment I forgot the unease, the distance I'd meant to keep. Exhaustion crept in. The fire dwindled to embers, a faint red pulse in the dark. My eyelids grew heavy, and at some point, I must have drifted off, slumped against my pack. I woke to a bone-deep chill. My breath clouded in the air, sharp and white. I blinked, groggy, and then I saw him, Owen, sitting cross-legged just outside my tent, staring at me through the mesh. His face was blank, eyes fixed, unblinking. A slow, icy dread coiled around my spine. "What?" My voice was a rasp, barely audible. He blinked, slow and deliberate, like I'd snapped him out of a dream. "Nothing," he said. "You were sleeping." I sat up, heart kicking against my ribs. Yeah. Guess I should turn in." I forced a laugh, thin and brittle, and stood, brushing dirt from my hands. "Footsteps, quick, too close!" I spun around. He was right there, inches away, his shadow swallowing mine. The air smelled of smoke and meat and him, a sour edge beneath it all. "Where you going?" His voice was low, almost a purr. I forced another smile, my lips trembling. "To bed. Long day tomorrow." He didn't move, didn't smile back. The fire's last embers reflected in his eyes, twin sparks in the dark. I thought, he said softer now, we were going to bed. The words landed like a stone in my gut. A sick, twisting fear bloomed. No, Owen, I said, steady as I could manage. That's not what this is! His face changed. Something flickered there, a crack in the mask. Then his hand shot out and was clamping around my wrist. Panic flared, white hot. I yanked back, but his grip was a vice, fingers biting into my skin. Come on, he murmured, leaning closer. No need to play hard to get. Owen, I said, voice low, sharp, let me go. He didn't! His other hand reached for my shoulder. I didn't think. I acted. My knee drove up, slamming into his groin. He choked out a sound, half grunt, half gasp, and his hold loosened. I twisted free, shoved him hard, and ran. The forest swallowed me. Branches tore at my jacket, my hair, my skin. My lungs burned, legs pumping through the undergrowth. I didn't stop until the fire's faint glow was gone, until the only sound was my ragged breathing. I dropped to the ground, curling behind a fallen log, and listened, silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, a crunch, slow, deliberate footsteps. Okay! His voice sang through the trees. Playful and wrong! You've had your fun! I pressed a hand over my mouth, stifling a whimper. Come on, he called. Closer now. It's cold out here. Don't be dumb. I didn't move. Couldn't. The footsteps circled. Paused. Circled again. Fine, he said at last, a sigh in his tone. Then, quieter, colder. I'll see you in the morning. The words hung there, a promise or a threat. I couldn't tell which. I stayed crouched, shivering, until the sky paled with dawn. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sent my pulse spiking. When I finally dared to creep back, the campsite was empty. His tent, his pack, the fire, all gone, like he'd never existed. My gear was untouched, but the air felt wrong. Heavy with something I couldn't name. I packed in a blur, hands shaking, and hiked out. 3 days later, I staggered into the trailhead, hollowed out, but alive. At the ranger station, I flipped open the logbook, needing proof I wasn't losing my mind. There it was, Owen, scrawled in jagged letters, signed out hours before me. I stumbled to the parking lot, scanning the cars, a dozen vehicles, none familiar. But as I reached mine, I froze. Tucked under my wiper was a scrap of paper, folded tight. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. One word, in that same jagged scrawl. Soon, I threw it down, jumped into my car, and locked the doors. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out, gravel spitting behind me. I didn't look back, couldn't. That trail, that forest, it's a ghost to me now. But in the dead of night, when the wind howls through my apartment windows, I hear his voice, soft and certain, whispering that single, chilling word. The 8th grade overnight trip to Raven Hollow State Preserve was the event of the year in our tiny town of Mill Creek, Ohio. Every spring, a pack of rowdy middle schoolers would pile onto a creaky yellow bus, buzzing with excitement for a weekend of hiking, campfire tales, and dodging swarms of mosquitoes that, according to the older kids, could suck you dry in seconds. It was tradition, a rite of passage we'd been dreaming about since 6th grade, whispering about it in the halls like it was some sacred quest. But that year, oh, that year, something went horribly wrong. We were halfway to Raven Hollow, the bus rattling down a lonely stretch of Route 17 when it happened. The air inside was chaos, kids shouting, lobbing candy wrappers, backpacks spilling out from under seats. My best friend, Theo, sat beside me near the middle, tearing into a bag of sour gummies that stank like rotting fruit. Want one? He grinned, holding up a neon green blob. I waved him off, laughing as the noise around us hit fever pitch, until the bus lurched. A deep, guttural cough roared from the engine, followed by a grinding screech that shook the whole frame. Then, nothing. We stopped dead, the sudden silence swallowing the clamor like a predator snapping its jaws shut. At first, it was a joke. "Oh, come on," someone groaned from the back. The driver, Mr. Hargrove, A grizzled guy with a permanent scowl muttered something under his breath, jiggled the gear shift, and twisted the key. Click. Nothing. He tried again. Click. Grind. The overhead lights flickered, a low buzz humming through the air, then poof, darkness. No hum, no glow, just the faint, blood-red smear of the setting sun bleeding through the grimy windows. "What's going on?" a girl whispered, her voice trembling. Miss Delaney, our science teacher with her too-tight bun, stood up. Adjusting her glasses like that'd fix everything. "Everyone, stay calm. It's just a mechanical hiccup. Mr. Hargrove's got it under control." But Hargrove didn't. He huffed, unbuckled his seatbelt with a loud snap, and stomped outside, leaving us in that dim, suffocating shell. I smirked at Theo. "Stranded's better than algebra, right?" He chuckled, but it died fast. Deep down, I felt it. A cold, gnawing fear I didn't want to admit. We were nowhere. Nowhere. No houses, no gas stations, no headlights cutting the dusk. Just an endless ribbon of cracked asphalt slicing through the Badlands, with scrubby hills and twisted trees clawing at the horizon 50 yards out. It had been hours since we'd passed anything alive. The teachers huddled up front, their whispers sharp and jagged. "Get a signal? Call the school." "Not good." Theo nudged me, his gummy forgotten. "Dude, what if we're stuck here all night?" I forced a grin, but my chest tightened. The bus felt smaller, the air thicker, those distant trees looming taller, like they were creeping closer, even though they hadn't moved an inch. Hargrove climbed back in, sweat beading on his forehead, his hands smeared with grease. "It's locked up," he growled. "Won't turn over." A murmur rippled through us. "How long till help comes?" someone shouted. Mr. Pierce, the gym teacher, fumbled with his phone, scowling. "Gotta reach the school first. Then they'll send another bus." Another bus? From Mill Creek? That was 180 miles away. My stomach churned, bile rising. Outside, the last threads of daylight bled out, leaving the world inky black. The wind died, the road stretched empty, and a silence settled. Deep, heavy, unnatural. We were alone. "We'll stay put till help arrives," Miss Delaney said, her voice too bright, too forced. "It's an adventure, right, kids?" She let us shuffle seats, eat snacks, whisper with friends. After an hour of munching pretzels with Theo, the edge dulled until a scream shattered the night. It wasn't from inside. Oh no, it came from out there. Beyond the faint flicker of the bus's emergency lights, out in that vast, swallowing dark. High, raw, unholy. A sound like flesh being ripped apart. The bus froze. Conversations cut off mid-word. A bag of chips crinkled and stilled, every head snapping toward the windows. My breath hitched, my heart slamming against my ribs. For a moment, nothing. No echo, no rustle, just that scream hanging in the air like a ghost. Miss Delaney cleared her throat, her voice wobbling. Probably just a coyote. Animals sound weird out here." But I shook my head. That wasn't a coyote. That was human, or something trying to be. Theo went rigid beside me, his whisper a hiss. "Dude, what the hell was that?" I had no answer. Only terror. Theo's question hung between us, unanswered, as that scream lingered in my skull, sharp, wet, wrong. Up front, Mr. Pierce barked, "Hargrove, lock the doors! Everyone, windows up, now!" The driver hesitated, his meaty hands still gripping the wheel like it might roar back to life. Then, with a flick of a switch, the folding door hissed shut. Shh, sealing us in. He twisted the key one last time, desperate. Click, click. Nothing. The engine was dead. Dead. And that sinking feeling in my gut turned to ice. We were trapped. Miss Delaney forced a smile, her voice trembling. "All right, kids, no need to panic. It's just an animal. We're safe in here." But her words sounded hollow, like she was begging herself to believe them. I scanned the bus. Wide eyes glinted in the dark, kids clutching each other, whispering fast and low. Theo's knee bounced beside me, his gummies abandoned. "Safe?" he muttered. Yeah, right. Outside, the emergency lights flickered, casting a weak, stuttering glow on the asphalt. A frail bubble of light swallowed by the endless black. Then, tap. A soft, deliberate sound against the glass behind me. I froze. A few kids gasped. Someone let out a shaky laugh, half expecting a prank. But then, tap on the other side. Tap, tap, tap. It spread, slow and testing, like fingers probing the windows for weakness. My blood turned to sludge. "Who's doing that?" Miss Delaney snapped, whirling on us, her face a mask of fury and fear. No one spoke. A girl 3 rows down whimpered, "Miss Delaney, it's outside." The tapping grew, tap, 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 moving along the bus, patient, everywhere. My heart slammed against my ribs, a rustling outside clawing at my nerves. I pressed my forehead to the window, breath fogging the glass, and peered into the dark. That's when I saw it. A face. Pale. Glowing. Hovering just beyond the light. Skin smooth as wax, eyes like black pits. Deep, endless, staring right at me. My lungs seized. A scream lodged in my throat, but no sound came. It didn't blink, didn't move. Just watched, unblinking, unfeeling. Then, gone. It turned and melted into the shadows, swift and silent. I jerked back, gasping, chest heaving. Theo grabbed my arm. "What? What did you see?" Before I could choke out a word, another face appeared. Opposite side, same as before. Then another, and another. Pale, smooth, smiling, grinning with teeth too wide, too sharp, peering through every window, studying us like specimens in a jar. The bus rocked, a hard, sudden jolt. Kids screamed, teachers shouted, but the noise drowned in a rising tide of panic. Flashlights flicked on. Miss Delaney's beam slashed the dark outside. And that's when we saw the worst of it. Footprints. Dozens of them, bare, circling the bus in the dirt. Not walking, not stumbling. Running, fast as lightning, round and round. But nothing made them. The light danced, catching glimpses. Shapes darting in and out. Too quick, too wrong. Every time the beam hit them, their lips stretched wider. Grinning, mocking. A silent cheese. The bus shook again. Harder. A girl sobbed, the air crackling with terror so thick I could taste it. Mr. Pierce fumbled his phone, muttering, come on, answer." A bang rattled the side. A handprint slammed my window, glass trembling. Long fingers, jagged nails, skin featureless, stripped of life, of humanity. I yelped, Theo and I clutching each other, slapping the seats in a full-on freakout. My pulse roared, drowning everything. Then, silence. The tapping, the rocking, the faces, gone. Like a switch flipped, the night swallowed it all. No one breathed, no one moved. Then, headlights. Faint, cutting the dark in the distance. A replacement bus. A sob of relief burst from the back. Miss Delaney sprang up, voice cracking. "Everyone, up! Let's go! Quickly!" We didn't hesitate. Backpacks grabbed, feet shuffling, a herd of scared kids spilling toward the door. I stole one last look out the window. Those footprints. They didn't fade, didn't scatter. They stopped, sharp at the light's edge, like their makers had melted into the earth. My skin crawled. We didn't run to the new bus. We shuffled, stiff-legged, silent, terrified that one wrong move would shatter whatever kept those things at bay. The new bus idled, headlights blazing, a lifeline in the void. The driver, Mr. Tate, leaned out. "What the hell's going on? Dispatch said your engine died." "Just open the door," Miss Delaney shrieked, waving us forward. The door hissed open, shh, and we flooded in, shoving, frantic, no order, no calm. Some kids cried, faces buried in hands. Others stared blank, bodies coiled tight. Theo and I collapsed near the back, my knuckles white on the armrest, eyes locked on the old bus's dying glow. Those footprints lingered, trampled by ours, but still there, overlapping, like we'd nearly joined them. The door slammed shut, tires crunched gravel, and we rolled away. I exhaled, shoulders slumping. Safe. Safe. But as the broken bus faded into the dark, I swear, God help me, I swear! I saw it. A shape, low and slithering, crawling between the seats inside. Not outside, not in the woods, inside. My breath caught, forehead pressed to the glass. I didn't tell Theo, didn't tell anyone. Who'd believe me? No one. Not then, not ever. But I know what I saw, and it knows I saw it too.